The Cuyahoga County Committee of the Whole, featuring the start of the 2015 budget update process for Wednesday, November 12, 2014, will please come to order, and I would ask the clerk to call the roll.
Calling the roll, Mr. Germana.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Gallagher is absent at the moment. Mr. Schron.
Here.
Ms. Conwell.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Hairston.
Here.
Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. Mr. Greenspan.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Brady.
Here.
Ms. Conley.
Here.
There is a quorum.
Thank you very much. Has anybody signed in for public comment related to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. There's no minutes on the agenda for approval, so we'll move on to item number 4, which is the 2015 annual budget update, presentation and discussion. And as everybody knows, last December we passed a biennial budget to cover the years 2014 and 2015, and this is an update process which will be less than the full 2-year process to consider what changes we need to make to update the budget for 2015. We know that the director has had a few challenges in the last few days, and we admire your spunk in standing in with us to help us through this budget process. And for today's meeting, we're basically hoping to accomplish 2 things. And the first one is to get an understanding of the county's finances as of the end of the 3rd quarter of 2014 and know where we currently are financially. And the second is to get an overview of the changes that are contained in the 2015 update proposal. So with that, I will turn it over to Director Murray for your presentation.
Thank you, Councilman Miller. I'll try and keep this brief. I know how riveting budgeting can be. As we mentioned, there we are. Come on, come on, come on. The 2015 budget update is based on Resolution 2013-229, which provided for a 2-year operating budget for all county agencies. The update includes the current biennial budget plus some modest adjustments that were made where necessary. I'll go into some of those adjustments as I walk through the presentation. In most cases, the proposed updates were limited to a very specific set of criteria. The criteria being we took pay 20 and we annualized that pay, plus made the adjustments that we felt were necessary. And we also have included any amendments by council that were passed in 2014, as well as any approved salary adjustments, be they bargaining or non-bargaining. In terms of parameters for the 2014-15 budget, salary and fringe benefits are based on current approved levels projected for 2014, and they're held flat with the exception of the 2 instances I just mentioned, which would be approved adjustments or non-bargaining or bargaining adjustments. The employee health insurance budgets were increased by 3%. So you'll see that in each individual agency's budget for hospitalization. Industry-wide increases in healthcare provider costs are marginalized because we have a significant cash balance in the hospitalization fund So the budget increase was modest. We think 3% is a modest increase at this point. A 2% inflationary parameter was applied for other operating contracts and expenses such as commodities. Those would be things akin to office supplies, things that are used up, ordered and used pretty quickly. The revenue estimates were based on the trends used to project 2014-15 period as of the completion of the third quarter review. So what that means is we took our third quarter projections for revenue, but have become the revenue estimates for the 2015 budget. The budget includes the impact of any budget cuts enacted by the state. In most cases, these reductions are held flat after 2015. And finally, county agencies with self-supporting revenues were to limit their budgets to their available resources. On the next page, you see a chart which compares the 2015 approved budget as of Resolution 2013-229, and that compares that to the proposed update, which is, so the resolution section is depicted first. 2015 proposed budget updates are the second chart, and then the third would be the summary of the changes. As you can see, for the general fund, the changes on the expense side account to approximately $2 million. The revenue estimates have increased by about $9.3 million. That's primarily due to our better estimates on investment earnings, as well as the sales tax for the general fund. In terms of the Health and Human Services levy, we are seeing a small increase in what we expected for the intergovernmental revenues to the Health and Human Services levy, which is essentially homestead and any rollbacks that come back to the county from the state. And we're expecting a slightly lower expense level, but you'll see later that is because we are proposing to increase the level of the public assistance offset, which we've used extensively to extend the life of the Health and Human Services levy. Next, we'll just talk a little bit about some of the budget updates, and this will be brief again. As I mentioned before, revenue updates are based on 2015 quarter three estimates. We made adjustments to the employer share of health costs. Again, that was about 3%. We've included in the wages any attributable bargaining unit agreements that have been approved, and the 1% COLA that was approved for the non-bargaining employees. Also, any budget revisions made by council in 2014 that have ongoing impacts, those are also included in these numbers. In the upcoming, or should I say forthcoming, document that you will receive, we'll have agency write-ups that will give you the exact resolution referencing an increase made by council. There are a couple of reorganizations of agency programs or budgetary realignments from within that are also included in our numbers, as well as any new programs or program budgets authorized by council in 2014. An example of that would be the Social Impact Financing Fund. And again, these details will be forthcoming in our update document, which, by the way, you should have by Monday morning. Again, the next page goes into some level of detail. I've already talked about these in a broad sense. Bargaining unit increases of 1.8 million. The non-bargaining unit increases, adjustments for healthcare. There was an increase to the Board of Developmental Disabilities budget. As you know, they submit their own budget, so we've changed our numbers to match what they believe they will spend in 2015. Hospitalization fund increase. That is primarily because the regional healthcare fund is growing. So municipalities are seeing the benefits of partnering with the county for healthcare. So we're seeing some growth there, as well as an increase in claims costs. For Job and Family Services, there was an increase in the children with medical handicap fund, and that's essentially bills for qualified children with medical handicaps. It is a county expense. The state essentially passes the cost onto the county. So the budget has been increased for that particular item. In terms of debt service, we're actually going to see a 2015 decrease. We are defeasing some of our 2004C brownfield bonds, actually in tonight's fiscal agenda, and improved gateway operations benefits the county because gateway operations offset our debt service for gateway. The Global Center, as you know, the management agreement with SMG has been renegotiated, and that cut the Global Center operating subsidy costs by $4.6 million. In terms of new budget requests, as I mentioned before, there was the Pay for Success, $1 million. Juvenile court is seeing an increase due to detention center overtime, and the placement expenses for juvenile court have increased significantly. Central Services or Public Works is building and operating contracts, utilities and such. For the sheriff, there's a few different impacts for the sheriff. The management contract for Metro Health Services was not in the original 2015 budget appropriation, so that has to be added. The Euclid jail operations have to be added. That was not in the 2015 budget as it was passed. And the prosecutor rape kit initiative, it's about $600,000. That has been included as well. Just a little further in terms of budget updates, some of this is actually a rehash of what I just told you, but employer costs are about $2.7 million. That's a 3% inflationary impact. Again, the hospitalization fund has seen an increase in the number of claims. Only $1 million in claims is from the county. $5 million is actually estimated claims that we will see due to the growth in the regional hospitalization fund. In terms of bargaining units, we've approved the ASME union was approved in 2015. The bargaining unit increase was approved, so that's about a $1.8 million impact amongst Job and Family Services, Senior and Adult Services, and DCFS. And then the non-bargaining unit increase, well, it's not a unit, but the non-bargaining increase for juvenile court was $1.1 million, and for the executive agencies, it was $1 million. These are all included in our numbers. Again, the BODD increases, we match the board's estimated commitments. They submit their budget, and we try to match our numbers to what their board has approved. And again, I've talked about the Global Center, the debt service decrease, and then the $2 million in various agency adjustments that we've made throughout the year. Again, this will all be in the update document. And again, I've talked about this. So, in terms of revenue, we're seeing significant growth in sales tax. We're assuming a 3% increase in 2015. Our 2014 estimates at this point include about a 2.8% growth. We're actually seeing an increase quarter 3 14 to quarter 3 2013 of about 4.2%. So that's very encouraging. Property taxes grew, but it's a minimal growth at this point, maybe $1 million. We're expecting charges for services to remain flat over the next couple of years. We are according to to the treasurer's office, we're expecting a growth in investment earnings to about $4 million. If you recall, the revenue in 2013 was minimal. Actually, it was zero because we were still amortizing the premium on investments that we held. There's been changes to the portfolio so that we would not have to continue that practice. And in doing so, the treasurer believes we can rebound on investment earnings for 2015. In 2014, we're assuming about $900,000, and then that'll grow to $4 million, and then increase by about 21% in 2016 to about $4.9 million. Other taxes include, the other taxes line on the budget includes one-time sin tax receipts, the Convention Visitors Bureau payments, and the 1% bed tax. Now, the Convention Visitors Bureau and the 1% bed tax, as you know, those right now are earmarked toward the debt for the Medical Mart and the Convention Center and Hotel. Casino tax revenue continues to be carried in a separate fund in 2015 and 2016. As of right now, current estimates are about $7.5 million each year. The casino tax revenue dollars have been earmarked this year. They will also be on tonight's agenda. The county will realize approximately $7.5 million in excess sin tax receipts. We're actually receiving that $7.5 million each year in 2014 and 2015. Per the indenture, the county receives these sin tax receipts after all obligations for the Brown Stadium have been completed. So that's a windfall for the county. Local government fund will remain essentially flat for the next couple of years. And in 2015, we are expecting about a $2.1 million loss in ODJFS revenue, which is essentially the state agency that contributes to JFS Senior and Children and Family Services. The next page just shows the expenditures by fund. As in years past, social service and justice continue to be the largest share of expenses. Actually, this is an all funds budget sheet here. By far, the biggest expenses for the county are the social service function, as well as the maintenance of the courts and the jails. The next chart shows the 2013 actuals, the 2014 estimate, the 2015 resolution column, which is the fourth from the right. The 2015 resolution column is the original 2015 budget as passed. And we're comparing that now to the new 2015 estimate, which is essentially the budget update that we're presenting to council. And then we follow that up with a 2016 estimate column as well, just to give you the purposes of comparison. As far as the Health and Human Services levy, you can see that in 2015, the total funding for 2015 is actually $247.7 million. That includes the second line, which is the $234.9 million. That number, I take the $234.9 million and we add the public assistance reserve, which is another way of saying the public assistance offset. We add those together and that gives you the true expenses for Health and Human Service programs funded by the levy is $247.7 million. But as you can see, even with the with the PA offset, we are in fact maintaining our HHS levy fund balance policy limit, which, as you know, is 10% for the levy. And the public assistance fund, it fluctuates year to year, but at this point, we started the year at about $40 million for the public assistance funds. So we're using that cash, in a sense, we're using that cash to extend the life of the HHS levy fund. The public assistance fund is dollars that we receive from the state of Ohio. Some of those are not spent for various reasons. It could be vacancies, it could be contracts, but we carry a cash balance in those public assistance funds. In years past, we received excess public assistance cash from the state during the magical TANF years. That has now gone away, but we still use the cash as we see fit. And what we've done this year 2015 will be no different, but each year we've used a portion of that cash to reduce the reliance on the Health and Human Services levy fund. As I said, the only changes to the public assistance expenses, which the HHS levy fund helps to support, would be, there were some realignments between Children and Family Services Children Services Fund to DCFS. And then there was there was growth in the medical handicap expenditures by $2 million. But again, the state simply passes that cost to the counties. That is the conclusion that I have for the 2015 budget. In terms of the 2014 estimates, I don't know if the schedules were passed out amongst the council members, but there are just a couple key points that I want to make as far as those are concerned. If you did not get them, did you not get these?
We do not have the
You do not
schedules.
have the schedules? Okay. Okay.
Can we have them copied and distributed?
This came with the reso. This came with the reso.
Oh, with the original resolution?
Yeah, it came with the
Okay.
resolution.
Okay, it should be in your books for tonight's meeting. Resolution, I believe it's 267.
What page?
I don't,
It should be.
Ms. Clerk, I don't believe that particular set of schedules is in the meeting document.
Wasn't that what you gave me with the resolution?
This came with the resolution, yeah.
The resolution. Starting on page 68 and then
69.
They're not included? Okay, so it's, okay. So, while we're waiting, we'll start with Jack, and 3-question rule is going to be in effect. We can certainly have multiple rounds, but we'll do 3 at a time. Councilman Tron.
I'll state it too. On the $6 million healthcare costs differential, is that the delta of the increase? I assume we were getting paid by any of the municipalities. What does the $6 million represent? Is that?
The $6 million is the delta. Well, actually, there's a $4 million delta between the resolution amount for employee health care or the health and wellness and 2015's proposed wellness. The $6 million, though, that increase is the actual cost, the actual delta for the claims. And the claims include both our regional claims, estimate for the regional claims, as well as claims for the county agencies. So we're not, so we didn't necessarily, you don't necessarily have to increase the budget to cover all of that because we have a cash balance in the wellness fund. Now, I don't have that cash balance in front of me, but
Okay, I thought you alluded to that there was a cost increase because we brought in other participants into our plan. That's what I thought you were saying.
the growth, for the $6 million, the growth, $5 million of the growth is estimated claims on the larger regional piece. And then $1 million increase for county claims.
Okay,
That's the 6 million.
so we've offered it to other communities,
Yes.
and they are tapping this with a higher rate of claims experience. And what's the revenue to offset that we've received?
Well, we would collect the revenue in the employee
Right.
benefit fund. Now, what,
I mean, the only way to know whether there's an increase is to know whether our costs have exceeded our billings rates to our communities that are using our self-insured funds. I mean, to talk about it in the abstract doesn't mean it's an increase. Can you give me?
I don't have that in front of me, Councilman Shrine, but I will certainly follow up with it, with Human Resources.
Okay, because if we received $7 million, then we didn't have any increase. If we received $5 million, we did have an increase.
Well, I'm just speaking of the increase in the budget.
Well,
But
no,
I
you-
understand your point.
No, you're speaking of the increase in the expense, not the increase in the revenue.
Correct.
The budget has both components to it, so I just want to know how the components come out
Okay.
on that. And my second question deals with the investment. You talked in terms of the projected revenue increase in our investment. Can you tell me what that projection is? Is that as a result of interest rates that we're projecting going up? Or is that because we have changed the investment policy within the county investment policy board?
I believe it's both.
Okay.
As to
and-
the-
and
as to
how-
the
how much-
percentage?
Can you give me the breakdown of how those break down? Because,
No, I don't want to give you the wrong number, but I will certainly find that out. I will
because
certainly find that
to
out.
my knowledge, we have not invested anything yet using the new policy, and so I just want to make sure that this board is seeing, if there's going to be additional revenue coming in, that we can actually forecast and have that revenue in reality, not just be something we hope for.
Okay,
Thank you.
I understand.
Mr. Chair, if I may, it's Lisa Durkin from the HR department is here. She can clarify the health care benefit questions that Councilman Sean had, because they're separate pools. The regional pool is a separate pool from ours, so any rise in those costs should not affect our, but Lisa can better explain it than I can. I just wanted to make sure Council's aware. Yeah, she'll have it.
Lisa, do you have the revenue side too?
Good afternoon. I don't have the actual figures on me at this moment. Sorry. Good afternoon. So I'm sorry I don't have actual numbers with me right this moment. And Could you refresh the question, though? I'm sorry.
Yeah, what Chris had talked about was a $6 million increase in the expense side by offering health insurance to some of our regional partners. At least that was what I understood the comment to be. What I'd like to know is what is the increase in revenue from that? And because if it doesn't do us any good to go out and sell this program because it costs us money, that's not really a good thing for the county to be doing. On the other hand, if it is, then we should be able to substantiate that it makes money for us and makes it a good decision for any of our 59 communities that might be using it.
Yes, sir. The cost is completely covered by the revenues from the municipalities that are participating in the regionalization program. Cuyahoga County does not provide any funds to cover any costs for the healthcare regionalization program. We do have to have the appropriation in the first place to set up that contract, but then we are paid back by those payments made by those municipalities.
Okay, so we should be able to substantiate over $6 million worth of revenue, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, good.
Correct.
If you can
We-
just present that to me, that'd be great, thanks. And break it down by the communities, because a lot of us represent the 59 communities up here. It'd be nice to know which ones are participating and whether we're, making money, breaking even, where we shake out on that.
Certainly, I have that information, and I will email that to you today. And we are actually, we are not only breaking even, but we do charge a slight administrative fee just, to cover our costs and our administration of that program here at the county. So I'll forward that all to you.
Good, thank you.
We have Councilman Greenspan followed by Germanin.
I just want to make a comment concerning that, Jax.
Okay.
It's a 5 million increase for the regionalization. 1 million is what my understanding is for our own. So it's not 6 million. It's 5 million additional revenue for the regionalization part. And 1 million is just the county's extra cost.
Correct.
Okay, that is correct. Councilman Greenspan.
Great, thank you. So, obviously, we just got this. So, looking through it, and these are some of my preliminary questions. On page 3, and I'm going to kind of go back to college when you compare and contrast concepts here. So, on page 3, it talks about a 3% increase in health insurance, a 2% inflationary factor, an increase probably in bargaining unit wages of 2%, just kind of going by where I think we are in the chronology of those, a 1% COLA for non-bargaining unit. Yet yesterday, when we were presented the bond document, the inflationary factor, the cost year over year was only 1.75% inflation rate. There's only one number that I just read that is below 1.75%. And that's the non-bargaining employee COLA. So how from yesterday's report were we using 1.75, but in the analysis of today, we appear to be well over that?
Well, we're using 3% increase for hospitalization costs alone. We're using 2% for other operating contracts, which is not, it's not the higher line item in most agencies' budget. We're talking about, for other operating, we're talking about agency chargebacks, postage. Now, granted, some agencies are heavy on postage. For other operating contracts and commodities, they're not to the level in an agency's budget as contracts for children and family services, for example. We're not talking about those contracts. I'm talking about other operating, it could be other operating expenses or other operating contracts and commodities. We use a 2% inflationary factor, and that's a minimal increase. The model that you saw on Tuesday includes these dollar amounts here, and then we add another 1.75% total to that line item. So the model is probably, well, I know it is. The model is showing more expense than the county would ever whatever C. Rarely do county agencies spend 100% of appropriation.
No.
It just doesn't happen.
Right, now that component I understand.
Okay, so.
But it just didn't, it didn't, unless what you're saying, the lower dollar items carry a larger percentage of the increases that you're projecting. I don't see how you get to 1.75, and then to further that, if you look at the 2014 on the roll-up you just gave us, the 2014 to 2015 expenses actually decrease
The
by
2014
by
to
2.2 million dollars.
Slightly,
Right.
slightly.
So you're projecting in one document, a 1.75% increase year over year. And in this document, we're showing a slight decrease.
Well, the 1.75% increase, that's on 2017's estimate. So we don't start with the 1.75% growth in the model until 2017, which is at 394.
Okay. Onto the next page, there's been a discussion, you keep talking about interest earnings being increased, or investment earnings being increased, and I see 4 million, I saw later in the document, $4 million. Is that the total anticipated increase?
That is the total of anticipated increase, yes.
And is that 1 year? Is that an extraordinary item, or do you project that consistently over all years?
We're each, in 2016, we're assuming about a 21% increase. So 4 million to 4.9 to 5.7 in 2017.
And what's changing in the investment strategy to garner that 21% year-over-year increase?
Well, number one, we have, I believe at that point, by the end of this year, we will have completed the premium write-off that essentially wiped out our investment earnings in 2013. And then I believe there were some structural changes made to the types of investments that the county holds, less long-term investments. But again, that's the best estimate we have from the treasurer's office.
Yes, so Mark Parks, Fiscal Office. Correct, the premium being written off is a large portion of the increase. We are getting to the point where there is no premium to be written off, so there wasn't a change in the policy, just the strategy. As it relates to the increase, we also took advantage of some of the higher rates as they hit and adjusted our duration to take advantage of those investment opportunities. So the increase is two-part. The write-off of the premium as well as the increased rates that we took advantage of during the year.
So in 16, then, are we not, you said there's no more premiums to be written off because it was written off in 14 and 15?
There's a small amount.
13 and 14.
Right.
13 and 14.
13, 14. Yeah. So there's a small amount in 14 to be written off, and then it goes away.
So then, once again, to my point, then, if there's no premium to offset, to draw down on any gains, to count, to be use kind of an accounting term, contra activity to the gain, then we're realizing a 20% gain in our investments?
That is the projection that we received from the investment officer. That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, we did make a policy change, if you recall, of 10% of our investment portfolio, which should yield anywhere from 2 to 3 percentage points higher, because we're going to be, if we put it to work, if it goes out to the communities, we did make that policy change.
Right, but even that in the aggregate isn't 20%.
Right.
I understand the strategy, I understand that's a good,
Can't tell you what the yield will be, but I can tell you we did make a
Yeah.
change.
We're not saying we're earning 20% on our investments. If interest rates go up from 1% to 1.2%, then we're going to increase our earnings by 20% over what we did the previous year, but it doesn't mean interest rates are 20%.
the, if I can continue, and and actually this bears out on this schedule. Well, let me ask this. I don't see in here the $5 million reserve on demand for the guarantee on the note.
It's here.
Where
It's on the
is it?
schedules. If you look at the 2015 adjustments to balance,
On what page?
I'm
You're on that
now
one. Okay.
I'm on the schedule. If you look at the 2015 adjustments to balance, if you look under economic development reserve, the $6.4 million, that includes the $5 million reserve for the Schofield building.
It's included in there. Okay.
And then the other 1.4 million is our guarantee for Flats East Bank development.
So that's all,
That's what's in that particular amount, yes.
okay. And with that number and going back, then we are, when we started back in December or January of 2011, I believe our reserve percentage, and here at the beginning of 2013, it was at 52.9. Are you saying that we will be 20 points lower?
No, that's not what we're saying.
Okay.
Again, the reserves, the adjustments, or the reserves on available balance, those include guarantees. And guarantees are legal, we've created legal obligations. We're guaranteeing debt service for some of our non-tax revenue projects. But our assumption is that the project revenues will cover them. And in most cases, as you can see, in 2013, none of the adjustments to balance actually hit. But in order to give you the actual available ending balance, we assume everything on this list that we have, the reserves, the guarantees, the gateway bond guarantee, the 27th pay, we're assuming the carryover encumbrances. That's obligations that are on the books right now that aren't projected to be spent this year, but they are still obligations. We take that entire list and we tell you, if everything hit, you're still gonna end up with a 37.5% balance in 2014. Now, again, the only thing on this list is actually that we assume is going to have an impact will be the $11 million 27th pay, which we know will be part of our 2015 spend. But the Global Center Reserve, that number there, that's the difference between the 0.25% sales tax, the Convention Visitors Bureau payments, the 1% bed tax, and then we deduct the gateway debt as well as the hotel debt. When you take the difference, it's $14.8 million in the current year, 19.1 in 15, and so on. But again, in this particular analysis, we're assuming that for some reason, we're gonna spend the money, just as a sake of example. So even with all of that, you're still ending the year with 37.5%. Most of these will never actually hit.
Now, my point is that going back to the year in which, the first year on this document, in 2013, we're at 52.8.
Right.
I went from the ending balance before adjustments, divided that by the total expense. So I took the noise out from what may be confusing. We're at 52.8. And then you look at 2015, we're at 38%. So we're 15%. We've used 15% of our reserves between 13 and projected 15.
No. These reserves, again, these are reserves that we legally have to, some of these we legally have to appropriate them. But project revenues are gonna cover the debt service on many of these items. And again, that $14.8 million, even if we decide to take some of that money and set it aside for a capital repair and reserve, we're not gonna spend $14.8 million on a capital repair and reserve. So these numbers, again, this is to give you the balance that's available, assuming all legal obligations manifest.
Will we ever use that 14.8? Is there ever a debt obligation out there?
For the,
Look at it from an accrual perspective, not from a cash perspective.
well, I guess that's our difference. I have to look at it from a cash perspective.
Right, from an
And
accrual
and
perspective.
From cash,
Right. No,
we're
from an
not gonna
accrual-
use it.
From an accrual perspective, do we have an obligation to spend that 14.8 million? At
As
some
far
point.
as far as I'm aware, no, we do not.
Okay, can we,
I have one other question. It revolves around pay for success. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Jack only used two, so I'm on Jack time.
okay,
Under pay for success, I see it listed under the general fund as a draw against general fund. Is that correct?
What are you looking at?
Let me find it here. In one of these documents, you have to pay for success. $1 million.
It is $1 million, but the expense is actually coming from the Health and Human Services Levy Fund.
And that's what I was gonna ask you. So, and where do I see that on the Health and Human Service document?
Are we back to the presentation?
Wherever you wanna show it to me.
On the last page of the presentation document, the pay for success is within the $247.7 million. It is now part of the 2015 budget.
And the 2016 includes the additional million for 2016's.
Right, so the budget reflects the policy of the $1 million each year for
Okay.
the next 5 years for pay for success.
Okay, thank you.
okay, Director, before we continue, I'm going to give you the opportunity if you have comments on the roll-up sheet number 7 that was distributed.
My only comments are, actually, Councilman Greenspan addressed the comments that I was going to make. In terms of the third quarter projection, again, the adjustments to balance at the bottom of the page, those again are county obligations, with the exception of the Global Center Operating Reserve. Those are county obligations and/or reserves on balance that we have decided to enter into, but we don't assume they're going to be spent. So when you see the next round of schedules from OBM in 2015, what you're really going to see would be the ending balance before adjustments. That's what we actually carry over. So we're showing you the all known obligations in case they hit, but in many cases, we don't believe that they will. But in order for you to have a clear picture of your balance, it has always been county policy to show our reserves on balance this way. So the general fund balance is actually in fairly good shape based on my comments.
Other questions by my colleagues? Ms. Conwell?
To the chair, to the director, the Job and Family Services increase of $2.1 million. It states that it increased in children, medical, handicap, and transportation. So I'm just a little confused because I thought our numbers were going down in the care of the children that we have. So I don't understand why we have an increase in their transportation. Could you
There's
explain?
There's a separate fund that the state has created, well, once it has us created, called the Children with Medical Handicap. And then we receive essentially an estimate on the costs that they are going to pass along to the county. And this usually happens along the same time that we receive our budget allocations from Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. Based on the information that we've been given this year, the Children with Medical Handicap expenses are going to grow by $2 million, and that is a county expense, and we pay for it from the levy. It's 100% levy dollars. And we can't control that. essentially.
Now, who are the children that we're transporting? The ones in our custody, correct?
They're the ones that qualify, I'm not aware, I'm not sure if it's only the kids in our custody. I believe it's, in some cases, it might be our kids it's kids that are eligible. And I'm not sure if that means kids in our custody, or if that's a larger pool, but I can certainly find out. I
Thank
can
you.
certainly ask that question.
Other questions? Councilman Greenspan.
Great, thank you. Just on page 10, you refer to other taxes include one-time sin tax receipts, and I understand that's due to the overlapping of one to the other. What did you say that amount was?
The excess sin taxes that we're receiving over this year and next year is essentially $15 million, so we're thinking about, it's gonna be 7.5 each year.
Okay. And we talked previously about presentation and extraordinary items being segregated so that they could stand out, so that we would be able to see revenue from continuing operations versus extraordinary activities, which this would be an extraordinary activity because it's not something we can project beyond, in this case, the 2 periods we know. Is it possible to start to do that? Where we start to see one-time revenue or even expense items that impact the financial statement, so we can see how we're doing from an operating perspective versus an extraordinary perspective. The net result at the end of the day with the numbers is still the same, but we would have a better understanding of the fact that, okay, look, in our revenue is not 385 from operations in 14, it's actually 377, which is marginally higher than the 13 budget, which then might lead into a discussion, because if your 15 and 16 numbers are basically year-over-year growth numbers, and you base it on a one-time extraordinary item, we may be overstating revenue inadvertently.
Well, the 2016 estimate does not include, obviously, the $7.5 million in each year. So we look at each year separately, but if I understand your question, I can, in subsequent quarterly estimates, I can certainly segregate or show
Even in a narrative as an
major
attached schedule.
You're talking about material changes,
Yeah.
one-time changes. I can do that.
Even if it doesn't have to be on here, just be an additional schedule of extraordinary items.
That's fine.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, Director, I'm going to take a shot at a couple of questions. First, on the,
Can I just follow up on that, just on that one point?
yes, you may.
I think it's, if you're going to reflect on Mr. Greenspan's one-time occurrences on revenue, then you really, in fairness, ought to be telling us the same thing on the expense side. So that should be in a narrative. I know that he only likes to capture the revenue side, but I think that it's okay to tell us the expense side if it's only going to occur a one-time only event too, because it's just as relevant on that. So if you could put that in a narrative, thank you.
Okay. So as an example, you would want to know, just so that I'm clear, you would want to know that the miscellaneous expenses includes a one-time transfer of, I don't know, a couple $1 million or something like that. You want to know that.
It's got to be significant in relationship to our budget.
Gotcha. All
And
right.
I'm not going to use the word de minimis again, because I did that once and somebody said $1 million de minimis. I thought, in that size of our budget, yeah. But
It's all relative, right?
Okay, Director, on page 4 of your presentation, if you look at the general fund operating, for the 2015 approved budget resolution 2013-0229, you projected a deficit of 2.5 million, and the current 2015 update projection is a surplus of 4.6 million for a positive variance of 7.1 million. However, the ending balance improves by 19.90 million from 101.1 to 121. What accounts for the remaining 12.7 that is not accounted for by the improvement in operations and revenue?
It would have to be the improvement in the third quarter projection of expenses. The, the 2015 budget assumed an ending balance of 106, well, as originally passed, the 2015 budget assumed a cash balance of 116 million. At this point, with third quarter projections finalized, we're assuming a beginning balance of $144.6 million for the general fund. So I think that's, again, when we're looking at the 2015 budget, the beginning cash balance for 2015 assumes full expenditure of the 2014 budget. When we move to 2015 proposed budget, in this case, we have a better estimate of what the 2014 expenses will be. And again, we normally spend under the appropriation level. And in this case, revenue is expected to be about 10 million. Also, revenue is expected to be about $10 million higher than the budget for 2014. So again, you're talking about different points in time and so my revenue and expense estimates, they're changing year to year.
Understood. The 2014 results that were not of course, in the resolution that was passed in 2013
Right.
are carried over as well.
Right.
Okay,
Does
thank you.
that answer your question?
It does. Okay. Second question is regarding the document that you provided at my request, which we circulated to everybody, which goes through line by line and tells what the changes are.
Right.
And my question is of a general nature, which is that there's this line item called other operating.
Mm-hmm.
And in that line item, there's lots of big changes. There's one, for example, in juvenile court, where a $2,230,000 item is totally deleted, and then there's one in development where $1 million item is totally deleted, and then there's other cases where significant items are added. And I'd just like if you could give us a little explanation of what kind of things are included in that other operating category and why it shows these large variances.
Essentially, other operating is, it can have some contractual agreements in that particular line. Also, it will have, as I discussed before, internal service chargebacks. It can have almost any line. I mean, it can have almost any level of expense that you would see in our contracts and professional services line. I guess what I would say is we'll have a document that will explain each of the changes. But as an example, the Department of Development's, I believe their decrease was due to the fact that we're no longer paying Playout Square for rent. So in absence of direction on my part, I assume that means it's a permanent reduction. But I mean, certainly we will have, and each case is different, but we will have the document that I'll be giving you will have detailed changes for each agency. But
So it's kind of a
in some cases, you're
miscellaneous.
seeing realignments. And also, in other cases, agencies are also given the ability to realign their budgets as they see fit. And barring a situation where we think that they're materially increasing the budget, we will go along with their recommendation because they know their operations better than we do.
Okay, Director, thank you. Third question is on roll-up page number 7. And it's getting back to the Global Center Operating Reserve where you assume
Here.
for purposes of being conservative that all of these items hit in your lower section there. And so supposing in 2014 that the entire 14.833 million were spent. Could there then possibly be a need to spend another $19 million in 2015? I mean, that's essentially what you've done. You subtracted out 14 million in 2014, and then you subtracted out another 19 million in 2015.
Right. This, again, this line, in this particular line, where we're showing you, what this is the difference between project sources for the Medical Mart complex. And when I say complex, I mean the convention center, the global center, as well as the hotel. These amounts that you see on this line, this is essentially the excess of revenue over expenses. So what
And that's from the 1/4% sales.
that's from the 1/4%, the CVB payments, as well as the 1% bed tax. So we're fairly well capitalized in terms of the Global Center complex. What this just is, Councilman, is honestly, it's a way to show you how much excess sales tax is available to the county. That's over and above our obligations on the 1/4% sales tax.
So any year when these excesses exist, if they're not needed, do they just flow to the general fund?
They're in the general fund balance, correct?
Okay.
Correct.
And other questions by my colleagues?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if that
Councilman
19,
Greenspan.
if that 19 million is an excess,
Yes.
then wouldn't it add to the balance and not subtract from it?
Well, again, the point in the total available ending balance is to show you, it's just to show you where you would be if you use that excess. That's the best way that we devise to show you that there is cash available over and above the 1/4% sales tax. So that we could show it on this particular report. It's the best way to show it.
to
But
Councilman-
again, that cash, you're not, at this point, there are no obligations tied to that cash balance.
To Councilman Greenspan, I think I can help with that in another way of speaking, that the revenue from that sales tax would be included in the $252 million number, which is the second line under sales and use tax. And part of that sales and use tax for the projects would be included in the last line under expenditures, which is other financing uses. But there would be there would be an excess of $19 million, which falls to the bottom line in the ending balances before adjustments. But then in the reserves on balance, the very conservative assumption is made, well, what if we had to expend all that money for the project, and you would spend that 19 million, and that would bring down your total available ending balance. But based on our prior history, that's very unlikely to happen. Other questions by my colleagues?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Councilman Jones.
the Public Assistance Fund Reserve, we're using, you estimate $3 million to be used?
In
On
2014.
this page 14?
Yes.
Last page.
Yes.
How much is actually in the fund, Public Assistance Fund?
It depends on the time you ask me, but we ended the year with about 40 million
40
in
million.
the Public Assistance Fund. So if we're judicious in the way we use that cash, we can extend the life of the Health and Human Services Levy Fund. It's our cash. It is our cash. Much of it is made up of excess TANF dollars that we never spent because citizens have been very generous with the Health and Human Services Levy.
And Councilman Greenspan already touched on it, but I need clarification. On page 11, it says the county will receive 7.5 million in 2015 for excess sin tax receipts. Okay, clarify for me, I know we will receive, was it roughly 13 million? We always talked about 13 million for the new sin tax. How does that number figure into what you have here? Or does it at all?
That's a separate, that will be a separate, that's a separate levy of taxes. So the 7.5%, the 7.5 million is essentially, you can say it's excess. It's excess. It's not gonna be used. The obligations for the Cleveland Brown Stadium have been filled, have been met. So, we've gotten assurances from the trustee that every dollar that we receive now from the sin tax goes back to the county, and that's per the indenture and the legislation that was passed
Previously,
many
20 years ago.
Many years ago, yes.
So this
Yes.
7.5, how much were we collecting annually?
It'll be, the 7.5 is what we will realize in 14, and then another 7.5 in 15. But then it ends.
From the old?
Right, right.
So
And
then
I'm assuming that the next sin tax will have similar provisions.
okay. And last, on the casino tax revenue, remind me, what is the number again that we will be collecting, or we collected annually?
That's estimated to be 7.5 million, and we have it separated in a special revenue fund. It's not in the general fund.
How does that number measure up to what we had anticipated or hoped?
I'm told that it is slightly less than what
Slightly
we
less.
anticipated, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Tron?
Yeah, I think that it goes back to our original casino revenue creation of the fund, where the numbers were coming in anywhere from 12 to 13 million is what we were seeing in some wild projections, and the reality is that it came in significantly less than that out there. And currently, what you show, just to follow up on that, you're currently showing $7 million in that fund right today?
The revenues are 7.5 million, and then, again, you'll see projects on tonight's agenda.
No, what do you show in the fund right today?
Oh,
I know what I
might
see
be.
on the agenda.
it might be 9.
Okay.
But that's, I mean, we're, with this particular appropriation request, we will have maxed out the available cash.
Can you give me the
extra
exact
tax.
amount of money? Because last time we
bet.
were very cautious to not spend money we didn't have.
Well, no, we're not exceeding our cash balance, but I can get you that number.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Other questions? Director, I have one more, and it's on page 6 of the summary, and you list a number of items. Pay for success, 1 million, juvenile court, detention center OT, and placement contracts, central services, operating contracts, sheriff's office, DNA rape kits. These are all initiatives either that we know about or operating changes that we really don't have a lot of control over. My question is there anything in the 2015 budget update that reflects a change of policy or a new program being initiated that we've not previously heard about, or an existing program being eliminated or curtailed? Is there anything like that in here, or does it consist only of routine operating changes plus these one-time items that we kind of know about?
This is, the budget that you have does not anticipate any program expansions or program deletions. The only real reduction, I think I mentioned before, the Playhouse Square rent as was taken out.
That's
So,
good.
That's it.
Okay. Questions by my colleagues? Director, I presume that in the next day or so, we're going to get the full
Correct.
budget book with all the with the roll-ups and all this stuff.
Yes.
We're giving you a little bit of a mulligan because you've had some
Challenging.
things you've had to deal with.
Challenging time,
So
Thank you, I
and-
appreciate it.
and besides the ordinance for the third quarter report would be 45 days, which is November 15th, and we're not there yet. So you're on time on that as well. So that's good. And so to my colleagues, obviously, we just got this today, and we're going to get the budget book in the next day or two. So the first thing we're going to do in our meeting on the 17th at 1 o'clock, that's on Monday, is that we're going to see if there's some additional questions on the overall macro situation. And then after that, we've invited about 10 departments that appear to have the most significant changes in them to come in for brief discussion, and we're hoping to complete the departmental reviews in the one day on the 17th, and then we would come back on Tuesday, December 2nd, I believe it is, and make any amendments that need to be made, and then get this budget update to the full council for passage under second reading suspension on December 9th. So that's what the plan is.
Councilman, will there also be, I'm assuming there will be an opportunity, if there are any OBM technical changes, I'll be able to submit that to you in the same time frame?
Absolutely. We would want to approve those at the December 2nd meeting. And so hopefully you could get those to us several days before that date so that we could review them. We expect that that's going to happen. December 2nd is the meeting where we're going to do amendments and then pass this resolution out of committee if all goes well. Any other questions,
one quick
Councilman
question.
Greenspan?
The package we're going to be receiving will include the narrative. It's a complete third quarter package. That's the next series of documents we're going to be receiving, or just the roll-up?
This will, the document you receive will have third quarter projection, a small narrative on the third quarter projection by agency. Also include a write-up on the 2015 budget update, as well as if there are any budget requests that are not in the document as you see here. So it will include all three pieces.
The revenue we're going to be receiving, will that be 9 months' worth of actual revenue? The 6-month period, we had 5 months of actual and 1 month of projection. What will
Yes,
this look like?
it will be 9 months actual, 12 months projection.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I think that we are making steady progress on the reporting front. I like that. Okay, anything else? That will conclude the first hearing on the 2015 budget update on time. And I'm going to now turn the meeting over to Council President Conley, who will get us ready for the executive session.
I had to get my script. All means of the Cuyahoga, let's go back to the agenda. Item 5 on the agenda is executive session. All meetings of the Cuyahoga County Council are open to the public under the Ohio Open Meetings Law. Under that law, council may go into executive session during a meeting for specifically authorized purposes. During executive session, we will confer outside of the public hearing. Council will make no decisions about any matters in executive sessions. All decisions are made in public. This afternoon, the Council of the Whole will go into executive session to discuss the collective bargain agreement with International Union of North America Local 650. During this time, we will be meeting in the council meeting room. So is there a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining?
I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Miller and seconded by Mr. Jimana. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Moving to executive session, Mr. Germana.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
Mr. Schron.
Yes.
Ms. Conwell. Mr. Jones. Mr. Hairston. Ms. Simon is still absent. Mr. Greenspan.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Brady.
Yes.
Ms. Conley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, we'll go into executive session.